Admiral stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, staring at the stars through the massive viewing window. The ship was huge, larger than most cities back on the. Its dark metal hull stretched for 20 kilometers in every direction. Weapons that could destroy planets lined its sides. Shield generators hummed with enough power to protect entire fleets. This was the pride of the Empire. This was power. Was tall even for a. His blue-gray skin showed the scars of 100 battles. 4 arms moved with practiced ease as he reviewed the daily reports. His black eyes reflected the cold light of distant stars. He had served the Empire for 300 years. He had conquered 47 worlds. He had never lost a single battle. The Empire stretched across the galaxy like a great web. 847 star systems bowed to rule. Countless species served as slaves or had been wiped out completely. They were the masters of space. They had been for 3,000 years. Admiral called out navigation officer from his station. "We have received the survey reports from Sector 7749. Turned his attention to the young officer. Was new to the fleet, barely 50 years old. His excitement was obvious. New conquest always excited the young ones. "What did the scouts find?" asked. "A new species, Admiral. They call themselves humans. They live in a system called Sol, on the 3rd planet from their star." Moved to the central command platform. Holographic displays showed star charts and data streams. With a gesture, he called up the survey information. The images made him laugh. The creatures were small, weak-looking things. They stood on only 2 legs. They had pale skin and tiny eyes. Their bodies looked fragile compared to the strong form. "What is their technology level?" asked. "Very low, Admiral. They use chemical rockets to move between their planet and its moon. No faster-than-light travel. No energy weapons. No quantum shields. Our computers rate them as Category 7. Category 7 meant almost no threat at all. It was the lowest rating possible. Usually, Category 7 species were left alone unless their worlds had valuable resources. They were too primitive to be worth the effort of conquest. "Do they have anything useful?" Continued reading the reports. "Some rare metals, Admiral, but nothing special. Their population is small, only 8 billion. They would make poor slaves, too weak for hard labor." Nodded. This was normal. Most new species they found were disappointing. The galaxy was full of weak races that never learned to reach for the stars properly. But then something caught his attention. Deep in the technical analysis, there was a strange note. "Officer, what does this mean? It says they have been broadcasting radio signals for over 100 years. Very powerful signals." The young officer checked his data pad. "Our scientists think they are just primitive communications, Admiral, but the signals are strong enough to travel between star systems, much stronger than needed for local use. Why would primitives waste so much power on communications?" "Unknown, Admiral. Perhaps they are simply inefficient." Studied the data more carefully. The humans had been sending radio waves across space for over a century. The signals carried what looked like entertainment broadcasts, news reports, and scientific data. Some of the transmissions seemed to be directed at other star systems, as if the humans were trying to talk to aliens. "Have they detected any of our ships?" "No, Admiral. Our scouts use stealth technology. The humans have no idea we exist." But notice something else in the reports. The humans had large radio telescopes pointed at space. They had computers analyzing signals from distant stars. They seemed to be listening very carefully to everything happening in their part of the galaxy. For a moment, felt a small doubt. Why would a primitive species spend so much effort listening to space? Why broadcast such powerful signals? It seemed like odd behavior for beings who had never met aliens before. Then he pushed the thought away. He was being foolish. The humans were Category 7. The Empire scientists had studied thousands of species. They knew how to rate threats. These creatures had no space fleet, no energy weapons, no advanced technology. They were insects compared to the might of the Empire. "Admiral," another voice called out. It was Science Officer. "I have completed the full analysis of the human species." "Tell me your findings." "They are carbon-based like most primitive life. They require oxygen to breathe. They live for less than 100 years. Their bodies are weak and easy to damage. They have no natural weapons like claws or armor. They should be very easy to defeat." "What about their military capabilities?" "Laughable, Admiral. They fight wars using chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Their largest weapons are nuclear bombs, but even those are weak by our standards. A single blast from our smallest ship could destroy their entire military." Smiled. This would be an easy conquest. Maybe he would not even need to use the full fleet. A few ships could handle the entire human species in an afternoon. "However," continued, "there is one thing I find curious." "What?" "Their mathematics and physics are quite advanced for their technology level. They understand concepts that some spacefaring races never learn, but they seem unable to build the technology to use this knowledge." "Probably just theoretical knowledge with no practical value," said. "Many primitive species have smart individuals who understand things they cannot build." The bridge fell quiet as officers returned to their duties. Around them, space was peaceful. Distant stars shone like jewels against the black void. Somewhere out there, the humans lived their small lives on their little planet, unaware that their fate had just been decided. Made his choice. The 7th Conquest Fleet would handle this mission. 300 ships should be more than enough to conquer one primitive world. It might even be good training for the newer officers. "Send orders to the fleet commanders," he announced. "We depart for the Sol system in 10 days. Tell them to prepare for conquest operations. This should be a simple mission." As his officers hurried to carry out his orders, looked back at the human data. Somewhere in his mind, that small doubt stirred again. Something about the powerful radio broadcasts bothered him. Something about their advanced mathematics seemed strange. But the doubt was quickly buried under 3 centuries of successful conquests. The Empire had never been wrong about threats. They had never lost a fleet. They had never been surprised by primitives. Soon, the humans would learn what it meant to face the masters of the galaxy. Dr. Sarah floated in zero gravity, moving between the monitoring stations with practiced ease. Around her, dozens of screens showed data streams from across the galaxy. Radio signals, energy readings, and gravitational measurements flowed like rivers of information through the computers. This was Argus Station, humanity's greatest secret. Built in the dark space beyond Pluto, it had been listening to the galaxy for 40 years. The station was hidden from alien eyes by advanced technology that bent light and radio waves around its hull. To any passing ships, this region of space appeared empty. Sarah was 53 years old. She had spent half her life on this station, watching and learning. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her dark eyes reflected the glow of computer screens. She wore the gray uniform of the United Earth Deep Space Command, an organization that officially did not exist. The station's walls were lined with equipment that would have amazed any alien scientist. Quantum computers processed impossible amounts of data. Gravitational wave detectors could sense a ship moving faster than light from 1,000 light-years away. Radio telescopes with dishes kilometers wide caught even the faintest whispers from distant civilizations. But the most important part of Argus Station was its purpose. For 4 decades, humanity had been listening to alien communications. They had learned alien languages. They had studied alien technology. They had watched empires rise and fall across the stars. And they had been preparing. "Doctor," called out Lieutenant from the communications station. "We're getting strong gravitational readings from the fleet. They've just entered hyperspace." Sarah pushed off from a wall and floated over to station. The young officer was only 28, but he was one of the best signal analysts on the station. His fingers moved quickly over the controls, pulling up displays that showed the movement of space itself. "How many ships?" Sarah asked. "The computers count 300 distinct gravity signatures. It's the 7th Conquest Fleet, just like our intelligence predicted." Sarah felt a cold weight in her stomach. 300 ships was a massive force. The Empire was taking humanity very seriously, even though their reports said otherwise. "Time to Sol system. 14 days at their current speed." Sarah nodded and activated her communication link. "Command, this is Argus Station. Package delivery confirmed. Repeat, package delivery confirmed in 14 days. The response came immediately from Admiral Maria Santos, commander of Earth's Secret Defense Forces. "Understood, Argus. Activate Protocol 7. All stations report to battle positions." Around the station, alarms began to sound softly. The 40-person crew moved with quiet efficiency. This was what they had trained for their entire careers. Sarah moved to the Central Command Center, where the station's most advanced computers processed incoming data. Here, humanity's greatest achievement hummed with electronic life. The Prometheus database contained everything humanity had learned about alien technology, tactics, and weaknesses. For 40 years, Earth scientists had studied alien physics. They had learned how other species built their ships, powered their weapons, and protected their fleets. More importantly, they had discovered the fundamental flaw in alien thinking. Every spacefaring race in the galaxy had developed technology in the same way. They had discovered faster-than-light travel early in their history. They had built energy weapons and particle shields. They all followed the same basic path of scientific development. But humanity had been different. Cut off from the galactic community, human scientists had been forced to find their own answers. They had developed theories and technologies that no alien race had ever imagined, and for 40 years, they had been turning those theories into reality. "Doctor," another voice called out. It was Commander Jackson Hayes, the station's military officer. "The Prometheus ships are ready for deployment. All 12 vessels are at full battle status." Sarah looked at the tactical display. 12 ships, against 300. To any alien observer it would look hopeless, but appearances could be deceiving. The Prometheus-class vessels were humanity's ultimate achievement. Each ship was only 500 meters long, tiny compared to alien battleships, but size meant nothing when reality itself was your weapon. "Are the quantum entanglement networks active?" Sarah asked. "Full synchronization with all Earth defense systems. The enemy won't know what hit them." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The aliens thought they were hunting primitives. They had no idea they were walking into a trap that had been 40 years in the making. She thought back to the early days of the program. In 1985, astronomers had detected strange signals from deep space. Not natural radio waves, but clearly artificial communications. The signals came from dozens of different sources, all using similar technology. The Earth governments had faced a choice. They could announce the discovery and probably panic the entire planet, or they could quietly begin preparing for the day when the aliens noticed Earth. They had chosen to prepare. In secret, the greatest minds of humanity had worked to understand what they were hearing. They had cracked alien languages, studied alien science, and learned the harsh truth about the galaxy. Space was full of empires that conquered and enslaved weaker species. Earth was alone, primitive, and defenseless. When the aliens finally came, humanity would need more than nuclear weapons and chemical rockets to survive. So they had built something else entirely. "Signal from Earth Command," announced. "Admiral Martinez is requesting a final status report." Admiral Roberto Martinez commanded the United Earth Defense Force from a hidden base on the far side of Luna. Like Sarah, he was one of the few people who knew the full truth about humanity's situation. He had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. Sarah opened the communication channel. "Admiral, this is Argus Station. All monitoring systems are active. The enemy fleet is exactly where our models predicted. No deviations from expected behavior." "Understood, Doctor. Are our ships ready?" "The Prometheus fleet reports full readiness. All exotic matter stores are at maximum capacity. Quantum field generators are online. Reality engines are stable." There was a pause before Martinez responded. "Sarah, are we really ready for this? 300 ships is a lot of firepower." Sarah looked around the station at her crew. These people had dedicated their lives to this moment. They had studied alien technology until they understood it better than the aliens themselves. They had built weapons that operated on principles the galaxy had never discovered. "Admiral, they think they're hunting primitives who barely know how to split atoms. They have no idea what they're actually facing. We've been listening to their communications for 4 decades. We know their ships, their weapons, their tactics, and their weaknesses. And our advantages. They've never encountered technology based on quantum foam manipulation. They don't understand space-time inversion principles. Their shields are designed to stop energy and matter, not reality distortions." Sarah paused, looking at the tactical display that showed the approaching alien fleet. "Admiral, they're coming here because they think we're helpless. That arrogance is going to destroy them." "I hope you're right, Doctor, for all our sakes." The communication link closed, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. Around her, the station continued its silent watch. In 14 days, the most powerful military force in the galaxy would arrive at Earth, expecting an easy conquest. They were about to learn that sometimes the hunters become the hunted. In the distance, hidden in the asteroid belt and the outer planets, 12 human ships waited in silence. Their crews had trained for this battle their entire lives. Their technology was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. And deep in space, the alien fleet continued toward Earth, unaware that their every move was being watched, analyzed, and prepared for. The trap was set. Now humanity would discover if 40 years of preparation had been enough. Space around Neptune twisted and bent as the fleet dropped out of hyperspace. 300 massive ships appeared in perfect formation, their dark hulls blocking out the distant stars. The largest vessel, the Eternal Dominion, was a mountain of metal and death floating in the void. Admiral stood on his bridge, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. The fleet had arrived exactly on schedule. Around them, space was quiet except for the normal radiation from the distant sun. "Sensor report," he ordered. "Scanning now, Admiral," replied the sensor officer. "We detect the third planet at distance of 4 billion kilometers. Primitive radio emissions confirmed. No orbital defenses. No space stations of military significance." Nodded. This was exactly what the intelligence reports had predicted. The humans were as helpless as expected. "Sir," called out another officer, "we are detecting 12 small vessels moving toward our position." "Show me." The main display lit up with tactical information. 12 tiny dots moved slowly through space, accelerating toward the fleet. The ships were laughably small compared to the alien vessels. Analysis of the approaching craft. Each vessel is approximately 500 meters in length. We detect no obvious weapons systems, no energy shields. They appear to be moving using some form of reaction drive. Almost laughed out loud. 12 primitive ships against his mighty fleet. This was not a battle, this was pest control. "Open communications with the lead human vessel," he ordered. The communication officer worked at his controls for several minutes. "Sir, we have established contact. Their technology is very basic, but we can translate their language. Put them on the main screen. A holographic image appeared in the center of the bridge. It showed a human male wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. The creature looked old and tired. Its pale skin was marked with lines of age. Its small eyes were dark and serious. "I am Admiral Roberto Martinez of the United Earth Defense Force," the human said. Its voice was calm, showing no fear despite facing impossible odds. "You have entered sovereign human space without permission. State your intentions." The bridge erupted in laughter. Several officers pointed at the image and made jokes in the language. The idea of these primitives claiming sovereignty over space was absurd. Stepped forward. "I am Admiral of the Imperial Navy. You will surrender immediately. Your species is now property of the Empire. Resistance will result in painful death." The human admiral showed no emotion. "Admiral, you are commanded to leave this system immediately. You have 30 seconds to begin your withdrawal. This is your only warning." The laughter on the bridge became even louder. Some officers actually fell to the floor holding their sides. The weapons officer was making gestures at the screen that were very rude in culture. 30 seconds, could barely speak through his amusement. "Little human, do you see my fleet? 300 ships, each one could destroy your entire world. You have 12 tiny boats. This is not a negotiation. This is your surrender or your death." 20 seconds, the human replied without emotion. Smoot shifted from amusement to annoyance. These creatures were more stupid than he had imagined. "You dare to threaten the Empire? We have conquered 800 worlds. We have destroyed species more advanced than yours. You are insects." 10 seconds. "I will enjoy watching your pathetic ships burn," snarled. "All vessels prepare to open fire. Target the human ships. Make their death slow." 5 seconds. The countdown reached 0. The human admiral did not blink. "Admiral, you were warned. What happens next is the consequence of your choice." The communication ended. The image of the human faded away. Turned to his weapons officer. "Destroy them. Use minimal power. I want some survivors for interrogation." "Yes, Admiral. All ships report ready to fire." Fire. Space lit up with the fury of 300 warships. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids discharged their energy. Quantum torpedoes that could crack moons streaked through the void. Graviton bombs that could collapse stars exploded in brilliant flashes. The human ships disappeared in a wall of fire and energy. The attack was so intense that sensors couldn't penetrate the destruction. When the energy finally faded, nothing should have remained but glowing particles. But the 12 human ships hung in space exactly where they had been before. They showed no damage, no signs of impact, no indication that 300 of the galaxy's most powerful weapons had even touched them. The bridge fell silent. Officers stared at their displays in shock. The sensor readings made no sense. The weapons had definitely fired. The energy had definitely struck the targets, but somehow the humans were still there. "Sensor malfunction," said quietly. "Run full diagnostics." "Sir, all sensors are operating normally. The human ships appear to be undamaged." "Impossible, fire again. Full power this time." The second attack was even more devastating than the first. Every ship in the fleet unleashed maximum firepower. Enough energy to destroy a small planet streaked toward the human vessels. The very fabric of space seemed to burn with the intensity of the assault. Again, when the fire cleared, the human ships remained untouched. "What is happening?" demanded. His voice was no longer confident. "How are they protecting themselves?" "Unknown, sir. Our sensors detect no shields, no defensive systems, nothing that could stop our weapons." The weapons officer was checking his displays frantically. "Sir, all weapons fired correctly. Energy output was normal. The beams definitely reached their targets." Then why are the humans still alive? Before anyone could answer, the communication system activated on its own. The image of Admiral Martinez appeared again. The human looked exactly the same as before, calm, tired, and completely unafraid. "Admiral," the human said, "your weapons are impressive. In another time, they might have been enough, but you made several critical errors in your assumptions about humanity." "What are you talking about?" His voice was harsh with growing fear. "First, you assumed that because we appear primitive, we actually are primitive. You never asked why a species with our radio technology would broadcast signals strong enough to reach other star systems." The human paused, looking directly through the communication link. "Second, you assumed that all species develop technology the same way. You learned to manipulate matter and energy. Very impressive. But you never learned to manipulate the quantum foam that underlies reality itself." Around, his officers were checking their instruments desperately. The readings made no sense. The human ships were there, but according to quantum sensors, they were also not there. They existed and did not exist at the same time. "Third," the human continued, "you assumed that we were helpless because we hadn't developed faster-than-light travel. You never considered that perhaps we chose not to leave our system until we understood what was waiting for us out here." Martinez leaned forward slightly. "Admiral, we have been listening to your empire's communications for 40 years. We know your tactics, your technology, and your weaknesses. We have been preparing for this day since before you knew we existed." The bridge sensors suddenly screamed warnings. The 12 human ships were beginning to glow with an eerie light that hurt to look at directly. Strange geometric patterns were extending from their hulls like wings made of twisted space. "What you see as primitive determination, we call patience," Martinez said. "What you see as impossible technology, we call the natural result of taking a different path. And what you see as 12 helpless ships, we call more than enough for what needs to be done." Felt true fear for the first time in centuries. Around him, his officers were reporting system failures as reality itself began to bend around the human vessels. "Impossible," he whispered. "This cannot be happening." "Admiral," the human replied, "you are about to learn that the word impossible has very little meaning when spoken by someone who doesn't understand what they are facing." The light around the human ships grew brighter, and space itself began to fold. The geometric patterns extending from the human ships began to pulse with mathematical precision. Each pattern was perfectly symmetrical, like a snowflake made of folded spacetime. Where the patterns touched normal space, reality seemed to bend and twist in ways that hurt the mind to observe. Admiral watched in growing horror as his instruments failed to make sense of what they were detecting. The readings showed that the human ships were simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. They existed in normal space while also occupying dimensions that should not exist. "Sir," the weapons officer called out, his voice shaking, "our targeting systems cannot lock onto the human vessels. They register as valid targets, but when we fire, the weapons pass through them like they're not there." "How is that possible?" "Unknown, Admiral. The ships appear to be phasing in and out of our dimensional framework." On the main screen, Admiral Martinez continued speaking with the same calm voice. "Admiral, your weapons operate by manipulating matter and energy within normal spacetime, effective against conventional targets but useless against vessels that can exist outside your dimensional reference frame." The patterns around the human ships suddenly changed configuration. What had been beautiful geometric designs became something else entirely. Sharp angles that seemed to cut through space itself. Lines that extended in directions that didn't exist. Shapes that the mind couldn't process. "We developed this technology because we had to," Martinez explained. "When you've spent 40 years listening to an empire that conquers everything it encounters, you learn to think differently about survival." The lead human ship moved closer to the fleet. As it approached, space around it began to ripple like water. The stars behind the vessel bent and twisted, creating optical effects that made no sense according to known physics. "Sir," the science officer reported, "the humans appear to be manipulating the quantum vacuum itself. They're creating localized distortions in the fabric of spacetime." "Is that possible?" "Theoretically, yes, but the energy requirements would be enormous, far beyond anything a primitive species should be able to generate." Martinez heard their conversation somehow. Energy is only a problem if you're working within conventional physics. When you can borrow energy from parallel dimensions and return it before the universe notices, the normal rules don't apply. The human ship stopped moving. The patterns around it began to rotate slowly, building up some kind of charge or field effect. Other sensors started showing impossible readings as the local laws of physics began to break down. "All ships," ordered desperately, "full retreat. Jump to hyperspace immediately." "We cannot, Admiral," the navigation officer replied. "Something is preventing us from opening hyperspace corridors. The space around us has been locked somehow." The trapped feeling made his blood run cold. In 3 centuries of warfare, he had never been in a battle where retreat was impossible. There was always a way out, always an escape route. "What do you want?" transmitted to the human ships. "What we wanted was to be left alone," Martinez replied. "But you came here with conquest in mind. Now we must ensure that your empire understands the cost of that decision." The patterns around the human ships suddenly snapped into a new configuration. Reality screamed. Space itself began to fold around the nearest vessels. The massive warships, each one a masterwork of alien engineering, simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed by weapons, not reduced to debris. They were erased from reality as if they had never been built. Watched in absolute terror as 20 of his ships vanished in the span of 3 seconds. No explosions, no energy discharges. They were simply there one moment and gone the next. "How?" he whispered. "Spacetime inversion," Martinez explained calmly. "We flip the quantum signature of targeted objects. Matter becomes antimatter. Energy becomes negative energy. Existence becomes non-existence. Very clean, very efficient." Another wave of ships disappeared. The crews didn't even have time to scream. They were removed from reality so quickly that their final thoughts were cut off mid-formation. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving surrender offers from 17 ship commanders." "Grab the communication controls. All human vessels, we surrender. We will leave your system immediately. Please cease your attack." There was a long pause before Martinez responded. "Admiral, what makes you think you're in a position to negotiate?" We surrender. That should mean something." "Did surrender mean something to the species you conquered? Did you show mercy to those who begged for their lives?" Another group of ships vanished. The inversion fields were spreading faster now, each successful deletion making the next one easier to accomplish. "Please," found himself begging. "We didn't know. We thought you were primitives. We made a mistake." "Yes, you did make a mistake. You assumed that technological development follows the same path for every species. You assumed that patience means weakness. You assumed that isolation means helplessness." The human ships began moving through the fleet like sharks through a school of fish. Wherever they passed, vessels simply stopped existing. The effect was spreading beyond the ships themselves. Space debris, escape pods, even the electromagnetic radiation from destroyed ships was being erased retroactively. "This is impossible," said to himself. 300 ships cannot be defeated by 12 primitive vessels. "Admiral," Martinez's voice cut through his disbelief, "the word primitive keeps appearing in your vocabulary. Let me help you understand why that's a problem." One of the human ships approached the Eternal Dominion directly. As it drew near, could see details that made no sense. The hull seemed to be made of crystallized mathematics. The ship's engines weren't producing thrust. They were rewriting the laws of physics in their local area. You see primitive radio technology and assume we're backwards. But our radio telescopes were listening to your empire before your scouts ever heard of Earth. You see chemical rockets and assume we can't travel between stars. But we chose to perfect our defensive capabilities before venturing into a hostile galaxy. The patterns around the approaching human ship were now close enough to affect the Eternal Dominion directly. Felt reality becoming unstable around him. His officers were reporting that their own instruments were starting to show readings that contradicted each other. You see 12 small ships and assume easy victory. But size means nothing when you can manipulate the foundations of reality itself. Half the fleet was gone now. The remaining ships were trying desperately to escape, but the humans had locked down local spacetime so completely that even faster-than-light travel was impossible. Our empire will send more fleets, warned. Larger fleets. You cannot defeat the entire empire with 12 ships. Admiral, Martinez replied, you still don't understand what you're facing. The human ship stopped just a few kilometers from the Eternal Dominion. This close could see the weapon systems that his sensors had missed earlier. They weren't made of metal or energy. They were made of twisted space, folded time, and mathematical concepts given physical form. These 12 ships aren't our entire fleet, Martinez explained. They're a single squadron, and this isn't our most advanced technology. This is just what we built to deal with conventional threats like your empire. The reality around the flagship began to bend. Felt his ship starting to come apart at the quantum level. The very atoms of the hull were beginning to forget how to exist. No, he gasped. This cannot end this way. The empire has ruled for 3,000 years. All empires fall eventually, Martinez said, usually because they grow too arrogant to recognize real threats. The Eternal Dominion began to fade from existence. Felt himself becoming transparent as the inversion field reached his personal space. Around him, his officers were disappearing one by one, erased from reality itself. Tell me, Martinez's voice followed him into non-existence. Was your arrogance worth the price? Tried to answer, but he no longer had a voice. He no longer had a body. He no longer had existence itself. The last thing he experienced was the terrible understanding that his empire had attacked something far beyond their comprehension. In the space where 300 warships had once posed a threat to Earth, only 12 human vessels remained. Around them, even the debris from the battle was gone, erased so completely that it had never existed at all. The silence that followed was absolute. Emperor sat on his crystal throne in the heart of Prime, capital world of the Empire. The massive palace around him had been built to demonstrate the power and wealth of his people. Towers that reached into the clouds, halls that could hold entire armies, art stolen from 1,000 conquered worlds. Today, none of that seemed to matter. Still no word from the 7th Conquest Fleet, the Emperor asked. High Admiral stood before the throne, his 4 arms trembling slightly. He was one of the Empire's greatest military minds, but the report he carried would shake the foundation of everything they believed. No word, Your Imperial Majesty. The fleet entered the Sol system 14 days ago. Since then, complete silence. Communication problems. Unknown, Majesty. We have sent probe ships to investigate, but they also disappeared upon reaching the target system. Emperor felt a cold touch of fear. The 7th Conquest Fleet was one of their most powerful forces. 300 ships, enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. It should have conquered the primitive human world in a matter of hours. Perhaps they are simply being thorough, the Emperor suggested. The humans may have hidden populations that require additional time to locate. Perhaps, Majesty. but the probe ships should have been able to establish communication even if the fleet was engaged in planetary operations. Before the Emperor could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. Emergency lights flashed red and blue, indicating a threat to the itself. In 3,000 years of Empire history, those alarms had never sounded. "What is happening?" On demanded. High Admiral was receiving urgent reports through his communication implant. His face grew pale as the information reached him. "Majesty, our orbital defense stations are detecting massive gravitational anomalies. Something is appearing in our local space." "Appearing? What do you mean appearing?" "The readings suggest that space itself is being folded to allow faster-than-light travel, but the energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases." Through the massive windows of the throne room, they could see the sky beginning to change. Points of light that weren't stars were becoming visible even in the daylight. The lights grew brighter as they watched. "Sir," continued, "similar reports are coming in from all major worlds in the Empire. Something is appearing in orbit around every important planet simultaneously." The Emperor stood from his throne. In the sky above the capital, 12 small ships hung motionless against the blue sky. They were tiny compared to vessels, but the energy readings they generated made the planet's defensive systems scream warnings. "Are those human ships?" "The design matches intelligence reports from the Sol system, Majesty." A new voice suddenly filled the throne room. It came from everywhere at once, as if the very air was speaking. The voice was calm, measured, and absolutely terrifying in its confidence. "People of the Empire, I am Admiral Roberto Martinez of the United Earth Defense Force. Your leaders sent a conquest fleet to our system. That fleet no longer exists." Emperor On activated his communication systems. "Human, you dare to threaten the Empire. We have defenses that could destroy your tiny ships in seconds." "Emperor On," the voice replied, and the use of his name sent chills through the room. "Your defenses were designed to stop conventional weapons. They will be as useless against us as your conquest fleet was." Around the planet, the human ships began to demonstrate their capabilities. Reality itself started to bend around them. The orbital defense stations, massive structures that had protected Prime for centuries, simply vanished. Not destroyed by weapons, but erased from existence as if they had never been built. "This is impossible," On whispered. "Your species has used that word frequently over the past 2 weeks," Martinez replied. "It seems to be your response to any technology you don't understand. But impossibility is just another name for limited imagination." In the throne room, holographic displays showed reports from across the Empire. Every major world was experiencing the same thing: human ships appearing in orbit, defensive systems being erased, military bases vanishing without a trace. But the humans weren't attacking the planets themselves. They were simply waiting. "What do you want?" the Emperor demanded. "What we wanted was to be left alone. Your empire chose a different path. Now we must ensure that no other species makes the same mistake. We will mobilize our entire fleet, thousands of ships. You cannot defeat the full might of the Empire with a few dozen vessels." There was a pause before Martinez responded. When he spoke again, there was something like pity in his voice. "Emperor, you still don't understand what you're facing. These ships you see are not our entire force. They are one small demonstration of what we can accomplish when necessary." High Admiral was frantically coordinating with military commanders across the Empire. "Majesty, our fleets are trying to respond, but something is preventing faster-than-light travel. All ships are trapped in their home systems." "We have locked down hyperspace throughout your empire," Martinez explained. "No ship can escape until we decide otherwise." The demonstration that followed was precise and terrifying. One by one, the great monuments of power began to disappear, not just destroyed, but completely removed from reality. The massive shipyards above Prime vanished. The military academies on the outer world ceased to exist. The weapon manufacturing centers that had armed the Empire simply stopped being. But still, no civilians were harmed. No population centers were touched. The humans were surgically removing the Empire's ability to wage war while leaving everything else intact. "This is not destruction," Martinez's voice continued. "This is surgery. We are removing the parts of your civilization that threaten others while leaving the rest intact." Emperor On found himself begging for the first time in his life. "Please stop this. We surrender. The Empire surrenders completely." "Surrender is not enough," Martinez replied. "Your empire conquered 847 star systems. You enslaved countless species. You destroyed civilizations that asked only to be left in peace." Around Prime, the remaining symbols of Imperial power continued to vanish. The great fleet bases, the military command centers, the weapons research facilities, all of it was being systematically erased. "What is happening to our people?" On asked desperately. "They are being relocated. Your military worlds are being moved to isolated regions of space, far from any other inhabited systems. Your civilian populations will remain where they are, but without the means to threaten their neighbors." The process took only hours. Entire planets, complete with their populations and ecosystems, were transported through folded space to new locations. The great infrastructure that had connected the Empire across the galaxy simply ceased to exist. When it was over, the Empire had been reduced to scattered, isolated worlds with no way to contact each other, let alone threaten other species. "Why didn't you just destroy us?" Emperor On asked. "Because we are not conquerors," Martinez replied. "We never wanted to rule the galaxy. We simply wanted to ensure our own survival." The human ships began to fade from the sky above Prime. But before they disappeared completely, Martinez delivered his final message. "Emperor, your species has been given a chance to learn from its mistakes. Use that chance wisely. As for the rest of the galaxy..." The voice now broadcast across every inhabited system, reaching every spacefaring species simultaneously. "This is Admiral Roberto Martinez of the United Earth Defense Force. Today you have witnessed the fall of the Empire, not because we sought conquest, but because they threatened our people. Let this be a lesson to any species that might consider humanity an easy target. We never wanted to be warriors. We never wanted to project power across the galaxy. We wanted only to develop in peace. But we will not allow ourselves to be conquered. We will not permit our people to be enslaved, and we will not tolerate threats to our survival. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us to exist in peace, but peace requires respect. It requires understanding that some species value their independence above all else. We return now to our quiet development. We hope never again to need to demonstrate what happens when that quiet is disturbed by those who mistake patience for weakness." 6 months later, Dr. Sarah sat in her office on Argus Station, reviewing the latest intelligence reports. The galaxy had changed dramatically since the fall of the Empire. No species had moved to fill the power vacuum left by the fallen Empire. Instead, a new caution had spread among the spacefaring races. Systems that had planned conquests suddenly found themselves more interested in diplomacy. Empires that had grown through military expansion began negotiating peaceful agreements with their neighbors. The most interesting change was in the communications traffic that Argus Station monitored. For the first time in recorded galactic history, no intercepted transmissions discussed plans to invade or uplift other species. The word human had entered the vocabulary of every spacefaring race. It had become synonymous with the idea that appearances could be deceiving, that technological development could take unexpected paths, and that patience should never be mistaken for helplessness. Sarah looked out at the stars through her office window. Somewhere out there, 12 human ships continued their silent patrol of Earth's borders. They would probably never be needed again, but they would remain ready just in case. Humanity had never wanted to be the galaxy's policeman, but they had successfully taught the galaxy that some species simply wanted to be left alone. And in the vast silence of space, that lesson echoed among the stars, ensuring that the price of arrogance would not be forgotten.